Let's get it started. Welcome, everyone. If you also take your seats, I would appreciate it. Make sure that you're on mute so that any random noises don't come through and we will get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our peer-to-peer sessions, Power of Voice in Image and Brand, Audience and Purpose with Paula Robinson Deare. My name is Hendrik Hernandez Resto. I am the creative specialist for New Bedford Creative at the New Bedford Economic Development Council. Thank you for joining us today. Before I go any further, please enter your first and last names and your emails into the chat for our records. I thank you. This peer-to-peer series is geared to enrich, educate, connect all of the creatives within our community. New Bedford is the home of artists, creatives, change makers, designers, entrepreneurs, and community enthusiasts. The peer-to-peer sessions embrace the pulse that makes New Bedford so unique while also expanding our knowledge and connection. New Bedford Creative offers many opportunities for artists and cultural organizations. Join our creative directory, apply for one of our grants or call to arts, list your event on our calendar, all for free at newbedfordcreative.org. Peer-to-peer sessions is supported in part by the City of New Bedford through its American Rescue Plan Award and Arts, Culture, and Tourism Fund, facilitated by New Bedford Creative at the New Bedford Economic Development Council. We would like to thank Mayor John Mitchell, his administration, and the entire New Bedford City Council for their continued support of the creative sector. This is just one component of a broader initiative to boost arts-based economic development and help the creative sector recover from the pandemic. Before I introduce our presenter, I want to go over the format for this session. Once I'm done, I'll pass it over to Paula. Once Paula is finished, we will open up for Q&A. Paula has requested that you note your questions based on which slide is on the screen. That way, we can chronologically go back through each slide and review if there are questions for each, or we can just go through and we're not hopping back and forth. So if your question is pertaining to a certain slide, please note what slide that is, and that way we can return to it and have a fluent conversation when we have the Q&A. Just so that everyone is aware, this session will be recorded. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat so we don't miss them when we open up for Q&A. Once we do open up for Q&A, we will answer the questions in the chat first and then go up to the open discussion. Most sessions throughout the series have been recorded and can be found on our YouTube channel at New Bedford Creative in the following week. I would like to introduce our guest speaker, Paula Robinson Deare, who will I would like to introduce our guest speaker, Paula Robinson Deare, who will teach you what they have learned about the power in our voices. Now I'll pass it over to Paula to share more details of who she is and what she will present for us today. Take it away, Paula. I'm going to mute myself now.
All righty. Thank you. Thank you very much, Hendrik, for that wonderful introduction. Thank you, Zane, for running the audience, and thank each of you for coming. I really appreciate this. For those of you who don't know me, I was formerly Director of Public Relations for Fox Broadcasting, and I got into training around public relations because in many communities, those without funds or those particularly in communities of color, people didn't know how to get the word out or to advertise important events that were happening. And some of those events were crucial to the well-being of the community. And so we started teaching how to do everything from brochures and public relations materials, meaning press releases, flyers, all the way up to television commercials. And that was helpful for some. So this is a part of those teachings. And thank you. Okay, so power of voice is really the authority that each of you have within your being, your experience, and your presence your experience is really the power behind the voice and what you share. And so it comes across in many ways because we all have so many different facets to our personalities. In particular, and I'm just grabbing, in particular, the facets to our personalities are part of who we are. For instance, I'll use myself. A mother, a sister, an aunt in many cases, many times over, a cousin, a wife, successful, I think, an entrepreneur. So each one of those facets has a voice of, has an experience that you can voice and share. And so you as a whole have uh, voices, for instance, for in each of the parts of your personality that you can share. But those voices don't always come across uniformly. And so, for instance, if you've been having a really difficult time and you just don't feel like pulling yourself together, and you have to go and be in a professional setting, but you show up like you haven't pulled yourself together, that conveys that you don't have it together, and you don't want to do that. And so a lot of people don't pay attention to those things. It's almost like knowing what game you're playing. Is it baseball? Is it football? You want to show up ready to convey what it is that you're delivering, and you want to be able to focus for that moment on that message. And your image and your brand shares that. Because people make instantaneous decisions. And while that might not always be fair, it's just the way the brain works. So you always want to think of the power of your voice, image, and brand is a part of the public relations of you or your company or your art or however you're conveying a message. So the design, the development, and you have complete control over the projection of the overall impression of you and what it is you're doing, just like what I'm doing right now is giving you an impression. Um, Similarly with your products, your company, or the company that you work for. When I first started with public relations, when I first started at Fox Broadcasting, before I got into public relations, I took the job as a receptionist, but I had a background in graduate studies at MIT and urban studies and planning. And I had all of the necessary things to have work in public relations, and I knew I wanted to work for the television station, not because I wanted to do public relations for them, but I wanted to understand how public relations is done on a national scale. And so I applied for a job as a receptionist, and I figured I could learn from any position. It was the only job they had open, and I knew they hired from within. So here I am dressing, whatever. The general manager says to me, "You can do anything you want. Why are you applying for this job?" And I told them, and they put me on a fast track for promotions because they wanted me to represent their brand. And so one of the early things that they said to me is, as a receptionist, and a receptionist in many people's eyes would be a lowly position, they said, "You are the voice of Fox. Okay. You are the first thing that everybody hears. And what we want you to do is to be able to project a professional image, similarly with the way that you're the first thing people will see when they come to the front door. They see you, and therefore you represent us. They won't always be let in, but you are our image and brand. And we want you to remember that as you figure out how you're going to move through this." And then they asked me to start training other people to do it, which was around the time it was ready for me to retire. But anyway, I'm saying that to you the same way. Your voice, the projection, the language that you use, the clothes that you wear, all of it is a part of your image and brand. Similarly, with the way that you deliver. If you become known as a doer, somebody who would get things done, that's also a part of your image and brand. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. Okay, so power of voice is also public relations, and just the way that I've explained, you have a public, whether you have two publics, you have the public that you're trying to reach as part of your audience, as an artist or as a business person, but you also have the public that sees you when you're not looking. You're going out for a run, like often I see the mayor jogging by my house. Um, um, there's a public that's there that may not be your customer, your consumer, but they certainly have influence over how your image or your brand gets conveyed. So you always want to be kind of aware of that. Not so much self-centered as, putting certain things into function, like, Monday through Friday, I know my work week is Monday through Friday. So Monday through Friday, I want to come across a particular way from 9 to 5 because those are my work hours. Even though I might not, it might be a holiday or I might be taking some downtime, this is still a particular way that you want to come across as a professional. You always want to have business cards on you no matter where you are, because that conveys your brand, even though you might not be doing business. My husband and I went to a jazz session the other night, and people wanted to get to know us more. And I keep my private number versus my business number separate, as well as my address versus my post office separate, because you want to begin to delineate the difference between your personal life and your professional life, even though they kind of cross over. So I'm going to just go through the slides here, and I'm hoping that you're taking notes on the slides or any questions that you have. There's 13 slides total, and I'll be willing to go back through the slides when if you have questions about them. So public relations has both a literal and figurative function. And literally, it's the public's impression of you, as I've explained. But that feeling about you comes from an idea or an opinion that's unconsciously formed from the evidence of the person's values. So you can't always control what people are going to think, but you can control whether or not they will respect your presence. So, and what that means is there are always going to be the unusual folks who are just not going to like you or going to treat you badly no matter what. I did a conference at MIT one time, and I was so proud. And my husband Paul was there with me. And I'm doing the lecture and I'm talking, I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm presenting at MIT. This is like amazing, right? An amazing point in my life. And this young man is in the audience and he's making it through my whole presentation. I didn't know what to do. And so I'm saying to myself, okay, if I don't know, it's, first of all, he was an MIT student, so I was floored that he would behave that way. And then the second is, what are the rest of the people going to room, including my professor was in the room, if I, get angry and try to deal with him from a point of anger? I didn't know what to do. Luckily, my husband was in the room. He stepped up for me and he said something amazing and it stopped. But you have to really think what the literal impression of you is going to be, because whatever they see or whatever they can, and sometimes people will do things to make you mess up or make you say or do something that is inappropriate to be able to catch you in a moment where you're off guard. And that's unfair. And those people are not necessarily going to be your public or your audience, but they will be there. So you want to be well rested, and you want to do a lot of self-care, and you want to be focused on what your message is from the beginning, and try to learn as many lessons as you can, because you're not going to have all the answers up front. Sometimes the answers don't come till after you rethink it 2 or 3 times and figure it out later. So figuratively, public relations is how you relate to the public as a whole, as well as how the public sees you based on what you project. Um, we've we've just talked about that. And if there are any more questions, I can go back over it. Public relations and the power of your voice embodies the design, the development, control, and projection of your overall impression, no matter what time of day, where you are, whether you're on vacation or whether you're um, a Saturday or at work or off work. Um, but what a person, organization, or product represents conveys and sends that message out to the public, regardless. Okay, public relations must be kept alive and growing with regular contact. I don't have a lot of online visibility. I keep Facebook up because I've been working on my products. My products are a series of journals you'll see at the end. And because I've been trying to make sure that I have a strong product out of my brand, and I'm sort of reworking my brand, I've kept minimal visibility with online communications. But I'm on that communications medium several times a week, making sure that the followers, and I don't have a lot of followers, I probably have close to 900, but making sure that those followers not only are within the type of saying within the type of things, I block the ones who are not saying the kinds of developmental things that I'm interested. I am interested in having more women followers because my audience, new audience, is going to be more women as I move through life, because I've worked with a lot of men and now it's just time I want to work with women. And I also try to make sure that I communicate with folks who are saying the things along the lines of my value system. And so that begins to develop a momentum over time. And then once I do my product line and I'm ready to start using these other mediums, then, you know, I can look at the power of my voice in those mediums as well. But I'll probably model it, this, you know, use the same kind of modeling. So it must be kept alive and growing with regular contact. When there was a point where I just got overwhelmed, I was actually sick and I couldn't check into my online, and it kind of got carried away. People were taking pictures, had taken pictures of my, one of my pictures and started using it to try to sell stuff that I had no idea what it was. So you really want to stay on top of the mediums that you're using online. And also in today's era, we must think of and manage a local to global public. So you're not really thinking that we're all global, but yeah, we are instantaneous. When I look at who comes to my website once a month, I mean, I look once a month, I look at who comes to my website, or sometimes it's quarterly. People come from all over the world. You don't know, and I can't tell, I can see what countries they come from because my server shares that. And I can see that they're using more than Google to search. And I can see what links they click on. And so that's really important. And I can see how many people from different places click on those links. And so that tells me who's attracted to what it is that I'm doing and where I need to grow it. And if I'm not trying to grow in that direction, what I need to do to shift it. So you really want to pay attention to the public that's paying attention to you and as you manage your local to global audience. Okay, so here's an example. First impressions. Who has more money in your mind's eye? Who would you say? You know, these are just random pictures. I use this in a class that I taught in Boston. Who is smarter? You know, random pictures, mind's eye, snap judgments. This is how the human being reacts. Who would you trust? Who has executive experience? Who would you partner with? And who would you purchase from? And those are the same kinds of questions that you need to answer for yourself. You come across a certain way, I mean, and I'm not saying that all people need to look the same or needs to be robotic, because my style is very different from Hendrix's style or Zane's style. But if you look at, how your reflection conveys, what image do you see yourself conveying in the mirror? On the days when I feel like looking like the person on the far left, and there are some, I stay in the house because I know it's a passing moment. It's not who I am all the time, but I'm just fried and I don't want to talk about it. Other times, I feel like I want to be friendly. Other times I feel like I want to be like the guy on the far right. And hopefully there won't be too many times where I look like the guy on the second and to the left, because I think that would frighten most people, just because he's not friendly, you know. Anyhow. All right. So the risk of conveying the wrong message. When someone meets you, they also internalize a lot of things about you. First impressions. Who is this person? Particularly people who have money, and who are concerned about safety, who are new to the neighborhood or who are new to the country. Are they genuine? Can they back up what they say? Can I agree with their ideas, ideals, or values? Will I be embarrassed by affiliating with them? Are they showing trust? How are they showing trust? Um, what is my gain or loss risk? What do I trust? I'm sorry, who do I trust that also knows them? And should I bother to look them up or just leave them alone? These are all instant impressions, okay? And you do this without thinking about it. When I first came to New Bedford, we moved into the neighborhood and neighbors were trying to get to know us because we were homeowners, and that sort of automatically gives us a bond. But as I went out into the neighborhoods and started looking for people who look like me, um, people were a little bit standoffish. Well, I found out it's because cultures in New Bedford stick more closely with similar cultures. Okay, that's fine. Then I found out I was Cape Verdean about 3 years later. I found out my 23andMe DNA came back and it said, all of your African DNA is Cape Verdean. So I'm like 60-40. I have 60% African DNA and 40% European DNA. Okay, so all of your African DNA is Cape Verdean. I was like, what? I'm in the right place for the right time, for the right whatever. So then I started telling people that, that I just found out I'm Cape Verdean. They were like, what? Some people went, what? Yeah, well, that doesn't mean anything to us because you don't know the language, you don't know the culture. But then other people said, oh, let me show you. This is what we eat, this is what we. So I have some people that embraced me and some people that haven't. You can't change people because people are protective of who they are, and you have to expect that. You have to respect that, and you have to expect it as well. But you can keep showing up. You know what I'm saying? And showing up with your best self, and showing up with the who it is that you are and what it is that you do, and trying to find a way for the people at the local level that you want to connect with to show your value and your utility. I was going to say utility because I'm a Capricorn, but I know that there's another that you have, that you can make a contribution, no matter how small. I was having a conversation, for instance, with this group of social workers, who are meeting on a regular basis. And they're social workers and counselors. And I'm neither a social worker nor a counselor, and I don't have any training in those areas. But they asked me to be a part of the group. And so, I've been to 3 or 4 of the meetings online. I've had them come to my house, and I just went to a meeting in Bourne. And I'm saying to myself, why do they keep having me come back? I'm not a social worker. But so the young woman who happens to be my sister-in-law, she's the one that asked me to be a part of the group. I said, yeah, I haven't really figured out why I need to be part of this group. She said, Paula, what you said to me, you're not yeah, I'm not saying you need to be a social worker or you need to be a counselor. But when I had problems at that last meeting, you came up with an idea that I've used. She said, I'm going to send it to you. She had she was counseling a young man who was having a difficult time making a transition, and she only had 3 or 4 more sessions. So I said, well, why don't you do a little workbook for him that can help him, show him the steps of how he can make decisions for himself, and then he can repeat that the rest of his life. He's a special needs student. I said, that's what I've done with other special needs students that I've had. She said, I did the book. I did it. I never told you, but I should have told you. And that gives me some value. So when I say when you show up, I'm not saying that you have to sell your soul, or do anything that's against your value system. But if your experience conveys that you have a contribution, or that you can make a difference, or that you can help with something that is trying to be solved, then, that's the kind of connection that you make with the individuals that are part of your local audience. Okay, next slide. Image and brand is a code of ethics. So you always want to be ethical. And whatever ethical means to you, you know what you believe in, you know what you don't believe in, you know what you trust, you know what you don't trust. You don't want to sway those values just because somebody with a different set of values comes into your window. Um, you will be far more respected. Like I have a number of people that come to me before they make a decision, because I have these very strong opinions about everything. I have very strong opinions, and even my sons. I have 3 sons. I have no daughters, 3 sons. They don't agree with me. They don't necessarily disagree with me, but they often want to hear what I have to say, because it just makes them think a little bit more, or think a little more openly about the possibilities of their decision. And so my decision making is based on my ethics. I have seen enough in life that I've seen how outcomes, how good things happen. There's sort of steps that happen, how bad things happen. There's steps, for the most part, simple things that I'm sure you've observed as well. And then, where you stand. You have to stand for something, where it is that you stand. If you didn't stand for something, you wouldn't have a product or a line, and you probably wouldn't be in this meeting. So as you think about that, well, what you stand for, your ethics, is imbued in your image and your brand, and it must apply to the needs of the public trust. So you can't have, um, be showing that you, say, for instance, I'm just going to use an arbitrary but easy to understand circumstance. If I'm saying that I'm a vegetarian, and then I secretly go out and I'm eating meat, well, that's basically going to come out eventually. Either I'm a vegetarian, or I'm a different title. I'm a once a week vegetarian or something. But you have to line up what it is that you're doing with who it is that you say that you are, so that as people see you in the different scenarios that they're going to see you. And New Bedford's a very small city. They're going to see you in different places. They start getting used to you. They may not have trusted you or liked you or wanted to know you at first, but over time, as they see your code or your ethics are stable, and that you're a stable person, then that people will begin to build a trust, and not just a trust. They begin to look forward to seeing those things from you. I'm going to use a vegetarian thing again. I had a friend of mine who was in the military for 30 years, amazing guy. right? He calls me one day and he goes, so how many medicines do you take? And we're like, he's about 4 or 5 years older than I am. How many medicines do you take? I said, what do you mean? He said, how many pills? I said, I don't understand what you're talking about. He said, you know, um, pills. How many pills has your doctor got you on? I said, well, I take pills for migraines or headaches, but I take vitamins, but I don't really take pills. He said, are you telling me you don't take anything for high blood pressure? I said, no, but how many pills do you take? He said, I'm not playing this game with you. And he hung up. And I'm like, what kind of game is that? But he assumed that because we were the same age, that but he called me also to sort of check where he was in life. And I think that that's what he was really doing, was we grew up kind of in the same neighborhood. We grew up with sort of similar families. We both have these big families. He's seen a lot of military time, but he started putting on weight, and he was trying to judge what society says about gaining weight, and issues with all of this and that and the other thing, versus what someone he knows that has been eating clean. And he didn't think that there'd be any comparison. And aside from the last 5 years where I got sick, my weight has been less, and I've maintained a consistent weight. And he was looking to measure that. And that's not what he said, but I know him. I've known him for probably 50 years. I know him well enough to know that that's what he was doing. And so I didn't call him back. I left him alone. And then the next time I saw him, he was in fantastic shape. I couldn't believe it. He had come to my mother's funeral. Um, but I say that to say that all of those things, sort of create your image and your brand and your ethics become imbued, based on the public trust. And you never know what people are going to be looking for who are close to you, or, people who you're just meeting. And your image and brand has to be designed to anticipate, accommodate, and convey your ethical responsibilities, whatever you believe those things are. Um, Image and brand, by precedent, must be committed to ethical practices and avoid ethical challenges or impressions of misconduct. One of the things that was difficult for me was to look at ethnicity and how I grew up as African American, participating in the civil rights movement, going force busing in Boston, all the stuff, watching the Black Panther Party trying to change, just all that was a part of my life. Then I find out I'm actually of Cape Verdean heritage. My grandparents passed away when my mother was, both of them were gone by the time my mom was 5, but that there's a whole different culture and civil rights fight that was happening, which is one of the reasons Cape Verdeans and African Americans don't really um, know each other very well. And part of it is political, because the United States shut off travel between the US and different countries for all ethnicities for about 40 years. So there's a couple of generations that don't know each other. But the point I'm trying to make is that um, rather than to immediately assume something is negative, trying to approach it with some kind of an understanding, I have found is the better way to communicate. I have a publication that's coming up with, tomorrow's the graduation, with 20 uh, fifth graders from 10 different countries. And each of them wrote part of their story, discovering celebrating my cultural roots. And so that's part of the image and brand that I convey as a multimedia cultural practitioner. So it is not just the Cape Verdean image I'm looking at, it's how all of the different cultures not only participate, but there's a whole thing that's happening internationally on the celebration and documentation and giving credit to indigenous peoples around the world. And so I'm trying to get a number of stories told by indigenous peoples about their cultural heritage to be able to participate in that international recognition. And so that's one of the ways that you know, globally, the image and brand applies. And I'm sure you'll be able to think of ways, you know, that it'll apply in your area of expertise. So, public trust must serve the public good by showing you have the means and have taken on a special obligation to operate ethically. And in this case, with the kids coming from the different countries, the ethical operation is to help them convey their humanity. Okay. Image and brand must be seen to serve the public interest by acting as a responsible advocate of the products and services you represent. For instance, there are people who are selling herbs, marijuana. One of the things that I've seen, so much controversy over marijuana. There's medical marijuana, and then there's marijuana for entertainment, and it's legal now. And so the medical marijuana field has expanded tremendously, and people try to lump all of that into one area, but it's really very different. It's as different as alcohol in some cases. You have the alcohol that you drink, clubs and parties, and then you have the alcohol that you put on wounds and use for sterilizing and cleaning surfaces. And so that's just probably not a great example, but it's an example about how different things can be seen in terms of the public trust when it comes to products and services. Okay. Image is a voice in the marketplace of ideas, facts, and viewpoints to aid in making informed decisions. Okay, so when we first met the mayor, when we came to New Bedford, one of the first things that we did, we wanted to look at a house. We saw a house that we liked. We went to City Hall to try to look up the records to see how old it was. And we came downstairs, and this guy was in the elevator with us, and he's talking, and I'm like, what is he talking to us? Wow, we just getting here. I have this thing I want to do. I don't really want to talk. It turns out it was the mayor. My husband elbows me. He goes, "Shh, that's the mayor." I'm like, huh? Okay. And he looked like the mayor and everything. It was just one of those moments where I thought my husband and I were having a moment, and this person was intrusive. Well, we got to be good friends, and we ended up helping him with his election campaign. But the point I'm trying to make is that the value and honesty of your reputation depends on the ethical conduct of everyone affiliated with your product and brand, as well as the pursuit of excellence with powerful standards of performance, professionalism, and an ethical contract. If the mayor hadn't been as good to us and shared with us what was happening in the different neighborhoods with growth and development, I don't know that we would have known as much as we needed to make a decision about buying a house. And then followed that up with, when it was time for him to run for re-election, we worked with his campaign. And to the point where we also decided to walk the neighborhoods and figure out what was going on. And then later on, I was appointed to the board of the Parks, Recreation and Beaches. And they were coming up with this modeling where they intended to bring in or change the golf course. They wanted to cut the golf course in half from 18 holes to 9 holes. And I don't play golf, but I'm very aware that if they cut the golf course from 18 holes to 9 holes, because I have a brother that's an avid golfer and a sister that's an avid golfer, competitive, really competitive, but that you're never going to get that land back again. And they were talking about putting buildings there that had nothing to do, that were potentially toxic in an already brownfield site, because we were at an event maybe 2 weeks before that was a brownfield site right across the way. So here we are arguing. So the mayor's assistant was saying, well, we need you to sign this as a member of the Parks Board. I need 100% okay. I refused to sign it. I refused to give my okay. I refused to sign it because what I needed to hear was this was going to be a green space. I wanted all 18 holes to stay the way that they were, whether they thought they would use them right away or not, because I knew In Boston, we had a similar situation with Franklin Park. They were going to cut it to 9 holes, and because they left it to 18 holes, they ended up having professional leagues there. It didn't happen right away, but it happened over time. And I saw the same thing potentially happening here because they were signing all these big contracts with Deepwater Wind. Well, where the locals going to be able to play golf, and why shouldn't they have access to the same things that the more affluent people have? So I held out. I got a phone call from the mayor guaranteeing me that he was going to, use the most ethical, practices. And then I saw it come out in the newspapers that, about the green space and so forth and so on. And I felt really good about that. So ethical practice is the most important obligation of your image and brand, and a competitive model for other professions, organizations, and professionals that align with or compete with what you do. And I'm not saying that I always get an okay from the mayor or I always get anything, but for that particular time, and he said he makes it a point to say hello, because even though he's the mayor, he realizes that as a voice, I use my voice to stage what I thought was important. Okay, am I okay for time? How am I doing for time?
It is 1:46.
Okay, so I got about 15 minutes.
Okay, 15 minutes, yeah.
Okay, so,
Yeah, we get like 4 or 5 so that we can give people time to ask questions if they have any.
okay, all right. So, can I expand my image? So now I want to talk a little bit about your audience as you communicate with the product and researching who the people are that you serve. I knew from childhood that I wanted to work with people who did not have the power to speak for themselves. Part of reason with power of voice, and part of the reason, particularly females, because I came through a time when women weren't allowed to go to banks, they weren't allowed to do a lot of things, and I thought that that was just unfair. I wanted to be able to counteract that balance. So as you think about the people who you serve, what is it? Who are they? Can you say what age group? Can you say whether they're male, female, or otherwise? Can you say, about what their income is and so forth and so on? And then how can you expand your image or your product by reaching out to them? Can your voice compete in the marketplace of folks that are doing things that are similar to you? Will people hire you for a job or contract based on your what you present? And if that's your audience, you're a B2B, a business to business entity, then who are those audiences? Are they other small businesses that you serve? Are they major corporations that you're providing a service to? What is your brand and how do you evaluate it? And that I've gone over with you. And how you evaluate it would be just looking at what you're doing that isn't quite along the lines thereof. I knew when I was getting ready for finishing up some products, and I knew that I was going to have to get ready to start to promote it. I wanted to get some clothing to suit whatever my new look is. My hair is shorter, I got gray hair, I weigh a little bit more. What's going to look good on me so that I can convey the professional image that I'm used to seeing with myself? That might be one way. Now it might be behaviors. You have to decide those things for yourself. What is your specialized knowledge and experience? For me, I know my specialized knowledge and experience is not only public relations, but I come from a huge family. I grew up with 11. My mother took in another 6. There were 17 of us in a house. And so that's given me management skills, the ability to communicate in groups comfortably, and an understanding of what families go through when they struggle for food and all those kinds of things. So what I do has a tendency to work with people who are in those kinds of situations. What are the highest standards of accuracy and truth, and in advancing the interest of those targeted as consumers of clients? And can I provide continued understanding and credibility? How can you do that? For me, the publications are a way. Am I who I think I am? And you can have this conversation with an objective person who can give you honest feedback. Can I back up my word? Am I willing to be who I say I am? Am I reliable? Can I be trusted to deliver, in ways that, in what ways am I faithful to those who support my brand? And how do I honor my obligation to serve the public's needs? And some of these questions on these last two slides are really designed for you. So these slides are going to be made available. And so the idea is you print them out and you just go one by one and you try to figure out how you can answer these questions. It certainly can't be done in this workshop, but I'm trying to give you the best of what I've learned. Okay. How do I honor my obligation to serve the public needs? And this could be a list. And in what ways do I deal fairly with clients, employers, competitors, peers, vendors, the media, and the general public? All righty. And then, so service questions that may apply, respect, and this is also things that you want to answer about your image and brand. Do you respect all the opinions and support the rights of free expression in your area of expertise? I mean, if somebody could say to me, I don't like what you're doing, you're not a cultural practitioner, how are you showing you haven't done anything on whatever their culture is? And I'd say, well, what do you think needs to be done? And that's how I often get into conversations that lead to the kind of work that I didn't expect myself to get into. In what ways do you protect and advance the free flow of accurate and truthful information, and so on, with the balance of these questions? These are also questions that you ask yourself, and you can certainly email me. We'll make that email available in the chat, with being able to address your image and voice. And then, while staying competitive, as you adapt and move quickly to meet the demanding deadlines, you want to be honest and accurate in all your communications, improve and expand, but make sure you declare safe what you present, because if what you're presenting isn't safe, like for instance, one of the things I had to do to ensure my student safety with my writing project was I didn't put their first names, because they're fifth graders. I don't want people seeing the publication and calling them in the street thinking that they know them. That's a real safety issue. And I explained that to the teachers. So I used first initial, last name. Okay. Act promptly to correct erroneous communications, which I've also had to do. Somebody's misspelling. You know how the autofill automatically fills in things that you didn't know what you were saying. You want to make sure that those things happen, and you might not see it right away. And don't be afraid to say, okay, I'll fix that right now, or I'm sorry, or I apologize, or, I'll address it immediately. And you want to always share the sponsors for your causes and the interests represented. Thank you, ArtNet, for allowing me to do this, and to disclose any financial stock ownership with a client's organization. In other words, all of these things will help you to avoid either deceptive practices or practices that work against your image and brand. We talked about technological progress earlier with the Facebook piece. And also, you want to embrace lifelong learning. And I'm moving through this because I think this is stuff that you already pretty much understand, but I'm reinforcing it and reminding those who are already doing this or who have forgotten. So beyond a social media presence, it's the way you present yourself and your product and company. Yes. A reflection of your professionalism and credibility, being clear about what values and services you offer to others, and helping others to understand their unique skills, products, and services, what sets you apart from the competition, what helps you to attract new business networks and like-minded individuals, how genuine connections can be established by solving, a problem that you see, providing a compass for your decisions and actions, it slightly reduces, significantly, I'm sorry, reduces missed opportunities and positions you for success, fulfillment, and resilience in the marketplace. And I just want to say this, this is the last slide, but I just want to say this. I approached ArtNet, because I felt there's 100 people that are all getting grants and nobody knows anything about them. I would love to meet them. And there really should be some kind of a telephone book or something that you can hold in your hand, because nobody's going to look at 100 names by scrolling down 100 things on the internet. The internet is instantaneous. And so I approached Hendrik and Margot, and they thought it was a good idea. And we ended up building a relationship, which led to this, being able to teach this class. And so you just never know where seeing something is going to do. And then just these are the publications that we're working on now. So the two on the bottom are just before ArtNet, and the one with my granddaughter's photo on the front is the one that I did with ArtNet. And then the two on the top, on the left, is my husband. That's his ArtNet project, and the Celebrating My Cultural Roots is the one we're doing for tomorrow. And that's it. That's my presentation. Okie doke. Am I in time?
Yeah, I mean, we got a couple minutes here. Do we have any questions? I don't see, or do I see any? No, I don't see any in the chat. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask now? Because we are opening this up for Q&A. Silence. That means you did such a good job. People don't have questions. They understood everything. They don't feel.
That's what I think it means.
That's exactly what it means. So we'll continue on with this. I want to thank you all for your time this afternoon. This was a great session. I'd like to also thank Paula once again for their hard work. Also, I'd like to thank our funder, the City of New Bedford, for making this possible. Please be sure to visit our website, newbedfordcreative.org, and join our free creative directory. This is the list that we use to promote on our social media throughout the year. Make sure to add your events, galleries, exhibitions to more to our calendar page that is linked to South Coast Today. We want the creatives in the city to excel, and we are here to help. We have plenty of peer-to-peer sessions coming up. Please join us for our next session, an Artist Grant and a Dream Part 2 with Allison Wells, and that'll be Tuesday, June 18th from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. And that link is in the chat already. Yay! You can see that link right there and register for that class. It'll be from 1 to 2 p.m. over Zoom like we do most of ours. Lastly, the recording of today's session will be on our YouTube channel within the next week. You can find us by searching New Bedford Creative. Have a great day, and thank you for your participation.
Can I add one thing?
Of course.
There are 6 parts in the series to this Power of Voice series, and the next one comes up in 2
25th.
weeks. On the 25th?
25th.
On the 25th.
On 25th.
Thank you. Thank you, ArtNet. Thank you, Hendrik. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, guys.